Lou, are we calling this a regular town meeting, or is it a
It's a workshop.
workshop? Very good. Okay.
Okay. I'm sure that Kimberly will log on here in a minute, but basically, what she's going to explain, there's two resolutions that are coming before the board at the meeting on October 7th. And one of the requirements for the board to pass these resolutions is that you hold a public hearing. And so we've already advertised a public hearing for the 7th. We're going to have it at, I think Michelle put it at 12:05.
Yes.
So it would be a quick thing. And we'll discuss them. The first resolution, R8, deals with establishing a special taxing district that will encompass only the properties owned by Southside LLC and Grays Hill Development Company. None of these properties are currently developed, and it won't affect any of the other residents in that area because it's a special tax that will be applied and put into a trust in order to pay for the public improvements. So that's basically what this does. It allows us to designate this as a special taxing district. And under the Maryland statutes relating to this, it allows us to do it by resolution rather than through an ordinance process, so it could be effective. But really, it won't have any effect on the properties initially because there's no improvements there to tax. There's no tax rate established yet. And that's where we get into the second resolution, R9, which authorizes the town to issue what's called special obligation bonds. And these bonds will be utilized, the sale of these bonds will be utilized to generate income in order for the developer to pay for all the public improvements. That's what it's for. It's a benefit to public improvements. And it'll be a very extensive project. And the ballpark I had so far from Municap is about 12 million. Now, I don't think that's been confirmed by the engineer's report yet, but that's a pending thing. But it's about a $12 million thing. And the aggregate total principal that the town can issue in this first thing, I think, is 15 million. The payback on these bonds and the principal and interest and premium income, premium redemption and all that, it will be based on income taken from properties within that special taxing district. It will not incur a liability for the town. Probably the biggest concern I think the board had, or any citizen might have, is this going to affect their tax rate? The answer to that is no, it doesn't affect their tax rate because they'll still pay regular real property and personal property taxes for commercial properties anyway. But the properties outside that will not pay any special tax to offset these costs. Kimberly Mann was going to give you the long and drawn out, I hate to say drawn out, but give you the lawyerese approach on this. But
Lou, can you, just for clarification, explain to the board how the norm, what we've done in the past, or how a developer in the past has collected those fees to pay for the infrastructure costs, what they do?
Basically, in the past, if you have a subdivision, the developer doesn't collect. We charge major facility fees, but they collect their money to pay for the public improvements through the cost of the homes. In this particular case, I imagine that the cost of the homes will still give some profitability to the companies involved, but the actual improvements are paid for through bonds. That's a little different setup. We've never had that set up here, at least in my 30 years being here. And we've never had a development of this magnitude before. So it's a very large project and it involves a lot of parts. And these resolutions establishing the special taxing district and the authorization to issue bonds, there's only a couple parts of that whole process.
Well, okay.
I thought I saw Kimberly.
Is the town under any obligation to meet any kind of financial shortfalls that might happen?
No, in the event that the public improvements exceed the value or the amount of money collected by the bonds, the liability falls back on the developer, not on the town. It's actually spelled out in what's called a developer agreement.
Hmm.
And also both of these require that the contract purchaser for both Southside LLC properties and Great Sale Development properties, they have to have fee simple ownership of that property before any bonds can be issued. So until that property is actually owned by the developer or I guess it's good Stonewall Capital or Southfields of Elkton Capital Development LLC, one of those companies or affiliates, no bonds will be issued at all for this project. And I'm hoping that that process doesn't hold things up too long if we want to move on this. I'm
There's
not
going to
sure
be
if it
multiple
really is.
owners. How does it work with multiple owners for the different tracts of land?
I don't know yet because I don't know who all the owners are going to be, because initially under our PUD regulations, I believe the whole thing has to be owned by one entity. Is that correct? So I'm not sure how it's going to be broken down yet because I just don't have that information.
And do we have any information on what the exact monetary impact is on these homeowners? Like, is it
No,
50
we
cents,
don't.
dollars? I mean,
Your question would be, how much is a special tax?
Right.
So when somebody is given the real property tax based on the assessment that any person in the town of Elkton, property owner, would pay, I don't know what the special tax is yet because it hadn't been calculated. Municap, I think, is going to perform that calculation. Then when it's available, I can tell you what it is, but they haven't done that yet.
what if we don't like it?
If you don't like it,
Yeah,
Don't buy a
you don't
house.
have to pay it. I can guarantee you, nobody in the town of Elkton, except in this special taxing district, has to pay any special tax. So they're off the hook.
I think one of the concerns of other neighborhoods has been that they're going to be funding the Southfield's infrastructure.
No,
And that's absolutely incorrect. But that was one of the comments that keeps popping up on social media. The other part of this is that if we do it the way that we always do it, and listen, quite frankly, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. But I would say that a couple things that I've noticed in the past that has happened. One, the trustee will have control of the money, which will allow the infrastructure, the curbing, the sidewalks, all the infrastructure in that development, which is a massive development, to be completed. What we've had in the past, when you look at neighborhoods like Baker's Hill, Walnut Hill, South Stream, there's a lot of, it just goes on and on where they normally don't do the finishing until they get all the lots built and then turn it over, I guess, to the town at that point. And I may be mixing a little bit of apples and oranges there. But as you buy a home or you're, let's use the example of Southfields because that's what we're talking about. The industrial part will probably be responsible for 35 or 40% of this special tax. The housing development, quite frankly, is probably only going to be responsible for maybe 20%. The commercial, the sports fields, the hotels would be responsible for that other additional amount to equal it up to 100%. And the houses could be charged as they buy their house. And I think normally when they go to settlement, they would pay probably anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. And that still could be the norm. You could still go with that philosophy. But this way, it allows the homeowner to actually not have to come up with that additional $1,500 to $2,000. And I'm kind of guessing here with these numbers. I'd say if it comes back at 5 or $6,000 a home, then maybe it doesn't make any sense, quite frankly, for a person. So I think we're still waiting on a lot of numbers as we move forward.
One of the things I want to emphasize is that of the project of the whole Southfields PUD, one of the parcels, parcel I specifically, that's the one over near Maloney Road, that is not part of the special taxing district. That is excluded from that. So that's where they're going to have the big warehouses or the that high industry aside. That's not part of the special taxing district.
So that's not included.
That's not included.
No.
The parts that are included, all the residential development, the commercial development along 213, all that will be, all the other parcels are included in the special taxing district, but parcel I over there where they want to build those big buildings and everything, that's not part of it.
This is a one-time attachment?
No,
Just a
the
one-
tax will be paid annually. You know, whenever you get your tax bill, you'll get this special tax, and that'll be paid. I was told the maturity date on the bonds is 30 years. So if you live there 30 years, you'll be theoretically paying that tax. And I think Municap will probably give you a breakdown of what that impact will be. It's an ad valorem tax because it's based on the value of the home or the property being taxed, because there could be commercial properties too. It also includes personal property. Well, personal property will only apply to the commercial development, not the homeowners or residential.
Lou, we've got Miss Kimberly Min on. So do you want to?
There we are. Kimberly, I already gave them a general outline of what's going on, so you need to give them the lawyer's viewpoint.
And I just first want to apologize to everybody for being late. I didn't have the passcode or whatever it was, the link to get into the meeting. It just kept saying waiting for host. So I have to apologize for my ineptitude at the technology. But anyway, Louis is exactly right for, all of the items that I've been hearing so far. And I do want to echo what he said in response to the question, because this is probably the most important part of what's being considered by the town. And that is, you are, at the request of the owner, applying and providing for a mechanism by which they can pay annual assessments that are going to be directly pledged to the repayment of the debt that is being used to build the very improvements that they're benefiting from. So that is the general circle of how, the money and the taxes will work. And it will apply against the entirety of the parcels, no matter what they look like now or in the future, and how many, parcels there may be. It's an umbrella over, each of those parcels that are being subjected to the district. So where can I pick up, Louis, on the legislation? Because we're still talking about the tax district, correct?
Oh, yes.
Or assessment district, yeah.
What I told them, there are 2 resolutions that are coming before the board on the 7th following the public hearing or incident to the public hearing. And now R8 is the establishment of the special taxing district. And of course, that resolution spells out how that district is and how the money is, how it will be distributed and things of that nature. And then the second resolution, R9, is a bond authorization. And I told them that theoretically, that number is, or the ballpark number is 12 million now. I got that from Peter, I think. But that's tentative until we actually get the engineers, assessment and all that, or construction costs. And also that the bonds would not be issued until the property is owned fee simple by the contract purchaser. So there's no bonds going out the door until all that's done. And of course, from the planning standpoint and the town's standpoint, we still have to approve all these projects too as they come in. They have to meet all the town standards and everything. So there's a lot involved here, a lot of different parts, but these two resolutions establishing the special taxing district and the authorization to issue bonds by the town, the special obligation bonds, are crucial to the development of the Southfields project.
Kimberly, could you tell us, just kind of, you probably mentioned this to us the first time that we met with you, but can you refresh our memories a little bit on one, of course, we don't have $700 million projects happening in Elkton all the time, but can you tell me, is this a norm throughout the state? I think you mentioned you worked on these before. Is this to our advantage or not to our advantage? Can you give us a little bit of the pros and cons before we get into that so that the board feels comfortable with this?
Yes.
Your mute's on, Kimberly.
Oh, sorry about that. Can everybody see me on the video? I've been trying to get that part to
Yes.
work.
Yeah.
Make sure
Oh,
you got
okay,
your hair
good.
right now, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so very good question. The short answer is yes. This is a widely used vehicle, or a widely used program is probably a better word for it, across the state and really, frankly, across the country. The state law that allows each municipality to do something like this is designed for, frankly, this very purpose. In the projects that I've been involved with, this is in the flavor of vanilla, meaning it is very clear that a road, which is basically that and the related infrastructure that's being built, is being built with, the assistance, not the financial support, but the assistance that's being provided by the town in issuing or permitting the issuance of bonds that are going to be repaid exclusively by this district, because it's this district that's benefiting from the improvements. The improvements, however, have to be of a public nature, right? We can't necessarily utilize the funds for, private type improvements. So, when you talk about what's a public improvement, a road is a perfect example. The reason that I think that the town is, going to experience a wider benefit beyond the, any kind of obligation it's incurring, because there's none really, is that it's using a tool available exclusively to it. A developer can't go out and do this. The private sector can't go out and borrow in this manner and provide a security in this manner. And so the town is acting as a facilitator, which many do in the state and beyond, to allow for the payment and the improvement to happen in this particular manner. So was that responsive to your question?
Yeah, I think so. It is a norm in a project of this size.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the advantages to the town.
So the first is, many times when you're looking at a road that will, by the way, ultimately be owned by the town, is many times the developers, and certainly in long ago in history, it would be the town that would be asked to incur the cost and the responsibility of providing a road. So you're not going to be paying for this road. You're not going to be incurring the obligation to actually construct the road. Instead, you're offering a program that allows the developer to proceed with installing a road that this development needs, and that would otherwise be something in the realm of a public improvement that normally a developer would look to the town to do, and then allows the developer to pledge, the repayment for that road to come out of the pocket of the particular properties that are benefiting from it. One of the great things that you're going to be able to tell the rest of your constituents is their tax dollars are not being utilized to build a road for this particular development. It's the dollars of the owners who are benefiting from the road. Historically, everybody's tax dollars are utilized for roads, whether they benefit for them or not. So that is really, I think, one of the primary benefits to the town in allowing and facilitating the developer to be able to use this program.
Can we back up a second?
Mhm.
You're saying who would pay for the road right now, Louis?
So, go ahead, Louis.
The road, there is no road right now.
Who would pay for the road as
Oh,
the
you're talking
project?
about if for a subdivision, if a subdivision was.
Right now. Right now, yep. Under our current, yeah,
We,
our current
normally
ordinance.
what would happen in a subdivision, and I'll give you, many examples around, the developer has to pay for that road, the improvements to it. And we go through a public works agreement with them, and
Right.
they pledge to build a road and put money in escrow, so to speak, and to guarantee it. And
Right.
following the completion of it, then the town accepts it.
Correct. So in all due respect, the example that you just gave us does not really apply, in my opinion.
So what Louis describes is, in a subdivision for a particular, a more privatized type development, that certainly would be the case that the developer would pay for it and later dedicate it. But what we're
Right.
talking about in this instance is a road that's really has a larger and wider transportation use associated with it. It'll be utilized by the general public. Every municipality has various means by which it gets its roads constructed, but many times, a municipality, for example, like a Main Street, would not be passing on that cost necessarily to a particular property owner. It would be something that's, spread sort of longer over it. So there is an instance where towns historically would have been responsible for road construction, and certainly in the charter, and then towns have utilized various tools, including a public works agreement and including this kind of program, to pass that additional cost that the town otherwise wasn't looking to incur onto the developer and the property owners. And here, because there's such a large swath of properties that benefit from this road, in another factual circumstance, there would have been a case made, by the various owners that would ultimately use this road, that this is for the public benefit, and try to pass that to the town. So you're right. There's lots of ways we don't pay for the roads as a town, but there is, in the general, public good concept, the fact that, the constituencies of a town generally support the roads and infrastructure within the town. Does that nuance make sense? Did I describe that in a way that clarified your question?
For me,
I think you're trying to use an example where the road in this particular case would benefit a larger volume of
Mhm.
traffic and users rather than a subdivision road like a
Right.
Walnut Hill, or you don't know those, but South Stream, they're mostly for those residents in a smaller subdivision. But in a Southfields project of this magnitude, that road will benefit a lot of people because of the sheer size, length, and dimensions of the road itself.
Mhm. And the proposed uses of this
And
area, which are commercial, and beyond sort of a typical residential subdivision, and designed to attract lots of people and not just residents. So,
Does that answer your question, Gene? Commissioner?
I'm letting that sink in a little bit. I still, I'm still struggling with the application. Perhaps, I would even understand it more if we did a special taxing district for the commercial areas. But it's something I have to digest here.
I-
So the special tax that's being assessed, correct, does sort of apply wholesale, to the properties, whether it's one piece of property or is subdivided into, say, and I'm going to speak in very sort of basics. I'm not saying this was going on in the project, into a shopping center and a residential subdivision. The people, the owners of the commercial property are benefiting from the road because, they travel it, and their customers are traveling it to access, their commercial enterprises, as well as, homeowners, on a much more, I would say, minor scale, because a lot of times and the rate and method will demonstrate this, bear a much smaller proportion, of the potential tax to, because they're utilizing the road to access their homes. What's a bit reassuring about this structure and the math and the allocations that go into it at the beginning is, we're going to know based on however amount of the bonds issued, what the potential obligation will be on a particular lot owner, be it commercial or residential, and it's all based on the debt that's outstanding. So there's generally not, when somebody's purchasing that particular piece of property, the sense that this is a completely open-ended obligation. Like, I would share your concern, if this wasn't so mathematical, that a particular homeowner could see their taxes go up in a manner that they wouldn't have anticipated, and then suddenly they're in a difficult position. Luckily, this is, because that's what condominium assessments sometimes do, right? Sometimes you realize that the building needs a new roof, and suddenly you have a special assessment that's designed to spread that cost everywhere. Here, we're going to have a particular known amount that needs to be supported on an annual basis in order to repay the bonds over a very extended period of time. Nobody can get a bank loan, for example. If the developer were to get a bank loan for the road, that would be owed back in 10 years, and the payments by the people who are benefiting from the road over the 10-year period would be even higher. But here we really do have, based on the issuance of bonds, and knowing the amount, a very fixed understanding of what the exposure is to any particular owner. And for that to expand, okay, then there would need to be another resolution by the town with an understanding of whether and to what extent that financial obligation could potentially grow. And so I do think that you do have the reassurance that you're not writing a blank check on behalf of owners and whatever future owners there may be. This is going to be a known number that we're going to have an understanding of up front. And I think the transparency around that provides a lot of reassurance around, what these property owners are committing to do.
How would you assess property that are not part of this PUD, have not received growth allocation, and we don't know what the future might be, whether any development would be permitted on a majority of that property at all? How is that assessed?
So, as the analysis that goes through is based on a projected development. There is actually diligence done on what potentially would be permitted and to be developed on those particular parcels, and based on that projected development, which has its own separate permit and approval process. This is not a zoning approval. This is not an approval by the town that they're going to be able to do what they want to do and sidestep the typical legal process for entitlement.
Right, but the expectation of the taxes on that property might exceed what the actual developable value of that property is. I mean,
Indeed.
You can say you want a marina down there, and what if it never happens?
So the reason, very good question, and it was so funny. Not funny, but it was very interesting. We had a very robust discussion on that very point in our working group call on Monday, because Lewis, I believe, informed by your questions, was asking that very same question on the call. And the short answer is, the people who are lending the money to the developer to build this road and who are doing looking at the analysis that's being done, looking at an appraisal that's being done, and sort of taking, lending the money based on the expectation that this will be developed, are the ones who are actually taking the risk that indeed, to your point, that marina may never be built. And, if for example, that marina property isn't able to pay, whatever taxes are associated, and the property owners therefore are not able, that property would be foreclosed upon, but all of the risk and the responsibility for the repayment of that debt is contained to the property and to the district, and not and not expanding beyond, nor the responsibility of the town. And so if you think about it, when the marina, as your example, gets built and the marina owner undertakes that development and constructs that property, they're doing so with the understanding of what their share is of this obligation.
I think I'd like to comment that these bonds, correct me if I'm wrong, Kimberly, but I think they're tax exempt bonds because they're issued by the town.
Indeed.
And because they're tax exempt bonds, an investor, the actual people who purchase them, that's an incentive for them
Indeed.
to purchase these bonds. Hence, I think what's
Louis, could you repeat that, please?
Going after it.
Louis, could you repeat that last statement, please?
I'm saying I believe that the bonds, a special obligation to support this project, are tax exempt bonds. Consequently, the people who purchase those bonds there's an incentive for them to purchase those bonds and get money back on their investment. And I think because of the magnitude of this project and such a large amount of money involved, that's why the developer is going after a bond issuance, because they need that money rather than cash out of their pockets in the millions of dollars. And it's spread over, I believe, a 30-year term to collect this money from the property owners in the special taxing district. So it's kind of like amortized over a period of time in which it can be reasonably recovered by the bondholders.
And then after that, does the special tax go away?
It goes away. Once the bonds are repaid, the tax goes away. Is that right, Kimberly?
That is correct. There's no financial obligation beyond the repayment of the bonds. It's not like that money gets collected and utilizes and be utilized in another way.
Mm-hmm.
Why would the properties that were outside the plan and development included in this? That's not, there's been no any kind of approved development plans for anything within the critical area, because we have to deal with the critical area commission. I don't understand why the critical area parcels are included in this.
So there's going to be a distinction between property that's developed and property that's not developed until, they receive their entitlements. The idea of including it all now is because, all properties are going to be sharing in the benefit of the road. And so at the time those properties, are eligible for development, and obviously generate a value, they will then share in the responsibility for the tax obligation.
Commenting on that, Kimberly, our work group, when we had the discussion of this, there was two ways of looking at it, having either one special taxing district or two. And I think the committee or the group came up with the idea that it might be best to have one special taxing district, but the initial bond issuance will only be for part of that project. And I think the part of it that Gene's referring to in the critical area, that would be subsequent. That might be 2 to 3 years away, or longer for that matter. So there wouldn't be any bonds issued with respect to that part of the project, but that project still would benefit from the initial bond issuance and improvements that would be generated from the other part of the project.
Right. So the way I always think about it is, if you need a 10-foot road and you've got two property owners, one property owner only needs 5 feet of the road and the other property needs the 10 feet of the road, the second property is getting the benefit of a 10-foot road, which is shared with the property owner who only needs the portion of the 5-foot road. So why would the second property owner only pay for the second 5 feet of the road when it's also using the first 5 feet? And so that's how I, kind of understand and agree and support wholeheartedly the inclusion even of the undeveloped property, because indeed, when it is entitled for development, it will be using the first 5 feet of that road, and it will then need, to have the second 5 feet of that road.
Does anybody have any questions at this point? Because we want to make sure that everyone's pretty clear on what we're going through. Kimberly will attend or participate in the special public hearing on the 7th in case there are questions that come up. And I'm sure there will be questions that'll come up at that point in time, because when you advertise a public hearing, theoretically, a lot more people will be involved in this special workshop. But it's important that the people on the board understand what this is all about and fully agree to having it done, or disagree, however they want to approach it. But I think unless the special taxing district is established, I don't think this project will go forward.
The one thing that I think that we all have a difficult time of grasping is that we're used to doing developments, little small housing developments, where the developer pays for the infrastructure inside that housing development. And the way that he gets his money back isn't that he's putting the money back, he's charging more for the lot, he's charging more for the house to pay for that. But the people don't realize that. They think that, okay, the developer is paying for that. Now, in this situation, Kimberly, I do agree with you. This is there's going to be a lot of people benefiting from probably a larger boulevard or a larger road. They're benefiting from the commercial properties that are up front, the sportsplex that's to the side, leading into the housing developments. There's going to be a lot of joint use there. And I know it's different for us, but I believe that it is the way to go to get everything done, taken care of. The people that would be purchasing the hotel, purchasing maybe the possible Wawa that's going to go on the corner, or the possible food chain restaurants, they will know up front what their special assessment is. Is that correct?
That is correct. And, another way to think about why the property owners are always so in support of this is because they are not paying for the road up front in the cost of their home. They're being given the opportunity to pay for it over an extended period of time, spread out through this additional assessment. And that additional assessment is much lower than it would have been because it's also being based on a tax exempt interest rate, which is formulaically much lower. So you're actually passing on, a power of the town, which is to borrow tax exempt. You're passing on that benefit, to these future property owners and allowing them to pay for a road, which they will know what they're paying for, and spreading that out over a period of time. So nobody bears the brunt of that up front.
Lou, of course, I think the whole board looks for your guidance, and you've attended, I guess, been on all the phone calls and listening. I guess we're going to look for your recommendation to help carry us through with this, and hopefully you're supporting it. So that's going to either go a long way or not go a long way.
Well, the first question in my mind is, or was in my mind, not at this point in time, was, will this special taxing district affect the other taxpayers in the town of Elkton? Because if it did affect them, I wouldn't recommend it at all. But as Kimberly emphasized, and as all the documentation will show, the special taxing district is unique in terms of how it collects money, how it pays for the public improvements over time, amortized over time, so to speak, and only affects those people in that special taxing district. So if any constituents of the board from the outside this periphery, so to speak, have a complaint about impacting their taxes, it won't. And that's probably, I think, what any reasonable person would expect. If it doesn't affect my taxes, and it's going to be a very fruitful project, these are responsible developers. They're not going to build some slum. And I think that it'll increase the tax revenue portion, some general fund revenue for the town over time, when this is developed, and it'll be a benefit to us. I really do. But I've never been involved in a project this size, so I think we're all a little cautious going into it, but it seems to have a lot of very smart people involved about putting it all together, so, including Kimberly, of course.
So Louis, thank you. Louis, you actually raise an incredibly important benefit that I, did not mention in my response to Commissioner Jean, and that is, that the town itself is going to recognize the benefit of the increased values to these properties and the taxes that these properties are ultimately going to pay, because, now there is a road that can access them, and that will, inherently increase the value of what can be done on these particular properties. And as those taxes grow by those homeowners, and I'm talking about the regular ad valorem taxes, then the town is going to be getting the benefit of those additional taxes that come from the commercial properties, the athletic facility, or whatever it is that they're paying. Their property taxes, their regular property taxes, are still going to be running to the benefit of the town, and the town is not giving up any of that benefit in order to allow the developer to use this program. Instead, the town is going to retain that benefit, and the cost of the road remains sort of with the properties that are directly benefiting from it. So that, Commissioner Jean, I'm sorry, I didn't see your last name, I apologize for that, is another benefit to the town.
Kimberly, I would like to say this, Commissioner Piner, from listening to you, Lou George, of course, always listen to Lou, but I just want to say that I got a clear understanding that we have no cost whatsoever involved with this. It's on the developers' heads and their hands. We're benefiting from this project with no cost, but yet we're getting a benefit. And to me, it looks like a win-win situation as far as I'm concerned. But I'm just stating from what I'm hearing from the details that you gave about this tax districting project. But I appreciate your information you've given, and it's clear to me that it's no liability to the town, but yet it's a benefit. So just want to clear that.
One other
So
thing, we're missing,
Oh.
pardon me, but we're missing some parts here. And I think the board early on had a question about what in reality is it costing people to buy a home in this special taxing district? And we don't have that information yet, but as soon as it's available, of course, I'll distribute it to the board, but I don't think they have that calculation yet.
Yeah, that's what I've been wondering. I mean, this all sounds great and it does sound like a win-win. It's a very nice package. My only concern would be that the houses be affordable, and I'm assuming that they will be to the buyers.
It depends
So
on who the buyer is.
Yeah, that's true.
That's no problem, but I'm
Mhm.
not sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
A
not
good
gonna
way
be
to think about
anything-
it, I'm sorry, a good way to think about it is they get to pay for this road over a much longer period of time instead of paying for it up front, as was sort of mentioned, the way sort of things usually work when they're doing this under
Right.
a public works agreement.
I think that's a good point, that when I won't mention any names, but the developers we've dealt with try to capture their investment in the infrastructure up front when they sell that house. But as Kimberly mentioned, the bond will run probably 30 years or so. And just it's an incremental amount that those property owners will pay rather than the entire amount up front with that capital cost of the house.
But you make it sound like the developer's going to sell the house for $250,000, but because of this special taxing district, he now will only charge them $240,000, which I see is just illogical to me as far as the way to try to explain the benefits of this.
I don't know what the price will be yet. I don't know.
Right. So why are we basing the fact that this is going to save the homeowner the cost of upfront prices?
Because a special tax doesn't include the entire amount that that person will pay at one time. It'll be as you as you have a mortgage, you pay for your house over a 30-year, 20-year period, however it's amortized. So I think that that special tax that's paid spread over that period of time will be less than what they would pay to developer X who charges it one time. I mean, it's a one-shot deal. We don't know yet. We don't know. I don't know what the price of the houses are yet.
I mean that it's being used as a tool for reasoning this tax is it's going to be cheaper for the homeowner instead of the developer incurring, charging those costs up front. But that's just an assumption. That's it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it better charge less, because I can tell you the special tax that they has to be justified. That cost over that bond period has to be justified before the bonds are even issued. So that's not something you just guess at. I mean, nobody's going to buy bonds, knowing that, or buy a home knowing that they're going to have to pay a lot of money up front, and on top of that, pay a special tax too. So that's one of the incentives I think that the developers are going to use to try to sell their houses.
And
you know what? And that's a perfectly good way to do it. I'm just saying there's no guarantee for that.
And Gina, I understand.
What am I missing?
Gene, I understand your concern with this, but
yes,
I'm not saying this a negative way, but I think that the developer is not saying that they're smart or intelligent, but I think their interest is to make sure that they develop something that's going to be affordable for the people so that they can make this project work. And in order to do that, they would have to make this cost feasible for the people in order to buy it. So I think that we really are jumping on something that we really don't need to really worry about, because it's in their hands to make this thing work for them.
Right, I get it. I
I'm
appreciate
saying
that too. Thank you. I guess in part of me feels as though I wish that they had certainly brought this to the table, along with some of their concepts, you know, letting us know that this was even coming down the pike. But, you know, I keep hearing what the advantages are to the town of Elkton, which I support 100%. I truly do. I'm not totally against this. I was just trying to grasp what are the advantages to the developer.
I think
So,
the advantage to the developer is to make money. Simple as that. They're out to
Well,
make money.
Indeed, Louis. But in this, you know, but to answer Commissioner Jean's question specifically, the advantage to the developer is that it does not need to look for financing for the road that it would otherwise have to borrow and find the money to build in the in the first instance, and then, you know, turn around and figure out how to charge that through. Instead, what it does is it facilitates what a developer would already do, which is, you know, get him the money up front, which is, it's very hard to borrow to build a road, and then put that road in place so that it can enable the rest of the development to occur. So that is the benefit to the developer. It's the timing of how they can get the money to actually build this road, and it is the sort of long-term financing that is, you know, available with this program that allows, you know, the cost of that road to be spread out as evenly and as long as possible, so that the property owners bear the lowest burden, and that will help the developer sell this deal and you know, and what they're trying to build. So it's those are the two benefits to the developer.
Okay, anyone else from the board have any questions or comments?
One of the things I want to ask Kimberly, and I didn't think to ask it at the group, will the special tax, once Municap figures out what it is based on the cost and everything, is that a finite amount of money paid, or equal amount of money paid every time they pay taxes annually, or is it changed with the value of the house? Is it based on a rate or an amount?
You know, that's a very interesting question. I'm not sure exactly how they've structured it, whether they, you know, whether they tweak, you know, and have it based on a percentage of assessed value, or just an amount. Typically, it is just an amount so that you can sort of, you know, share predictability around it, because it is, as you know, a finite financial obligation in the aggregate. The question is just how you spread it around. But it could be that they do employ a percentage allocation around it, because, you know, eventually they're going to be, you know, transitioning some of the financial responsibility to the undevelopable properties.
Okay, the reason I mentioned that
that'll
is that
be done. Mm-hmm.
in Maryland, the Department of Assessments and Taxation evaluates a home, I think, on a 3-year basis.
They do.
And of course, the value of the house could go up or down. And of course, we apply a tax rate, and our tax rate applies to whatever that assessment is.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than, we don't apply a tax, we apply a tax rate based on that assessment. So I didn't know, didn't think to ask whether the Unicap will figure this up. I'm sure they'll figure up, you know, the payment, or the principal and the bonds and the interest and premium redemption thing and all the rest of the stuff that goes with it. But I didn't know if it's based on a rate, as the assessment could change up or down. I think, I don't know, you may not know the answer to that, and we'll have to find out.
Well, so we don't have actually the rate and method of apportionment, which is one of the attachments to the resolution, as I understand it, that's in the works and will be distributed this week. Again, I'm all for one of, communication and understanding. I believe that, one of my responsibilities here is to equip the commission with the answers and the information that they need to make their decisions. And it may be that, once that that RMA is what they call it, or once that analysis is complete and available, that those who may be interested in understanding how the assessments will be made and calculated, are perhaps given a, sort of a summary, or even, an ability to have, ask questions of MuniCap, because this is, what they do. This is what, frankly, their job is, and they do this all over the country. And so they're going to be very easily, Louis, I think, able to help, answer that particular question, so that, again, if there's an understanding that people want to have on the calculation, then that can be communicated.
Okay.
But we do need to see what they produce.
Well, the bottom line is that only the property owners within that special taxing district will have that burden of cost on them, not
Indeed.
outside that district.
Nope.
So the emphasis I make here is that it doesn't impact the tax rate of other citizens outside the special taxing district in our town.
Correct.
Any
Can I
other
ask you a
comments?
question?
Yeah, go ahead, Gene.
The special taxes that'll be assessed, that's for public improvements such as roads, water, and
Mhm.
sewer, but only
Indeed.
only the mains in the street, not going to the properties, correct?
Correct. I think, the way they usually call it is they say it's stubbed to the property line,
Right.
right? So yeah, it's what, it's what is enjoyed by the public. So I can drive
Stormwater
down the
management,
road.
Yes,
Is that part of it? Yeah, I haven't
Yes.
seen the description
but
of
there's
the
some
plans.
stormwater management for the commercial properties is private, as is the water and sewer lines.
No, along the road, as I understand it, Louis, the public improvements that are in particular being financed on this project are the road, or the sort of mains and lines
Right-of-way?
that run alongside the road in the right of way. Mhm.
okay.
Yeah,
It also
this is as vanilla as it gets, to be honest.
Is this also
Mhm.
covering street lights?
Oh, I don't know what the lighting plan is, actually.
What
You
about
know,
what about improvements to the state highway for like signalization and that sort of thing?
I don't recall a signal being included in the scope of what this is to be, paid for. But Louis, that's, I think that's something that they're getting their hands around because of, what they want to fit in the budget. And so we can get that information. That's something that will be known up front at the time the bonds are issued.
One of the things to emphasize here is that the public improvements to be identified here can only be subsidized by the bonds. Bonds cannot support private. So if it's a commercial development and it's a stormwater pond that's privately owned, the proceeds from these bonds do not apply to that cost or expense. That's at the developer or whoever the property owner is. So there is a very stringent rule here in terms of applying those bond proceeds to pay for only public improvements.
And
Mhm.
the reason I'm asking is because for stormwater management, for single family residential lots, ordinarily the stormwater ponds and facilities are owned by the town. But for apartment complexes, multifamily housing, they're not, they're private.
Yeah, so there's a legal requirement that whatever is financed ultimately needs to be owned by the town.
And if it's not owned by the town, it won't apply to the proceeds from those bonds.
Correct.
I assume they're going to break this out more specifically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That is the case. There's two pieces of detail, as you can tell, are still in process. I find that typically to be the case. What we've done is structured the schedule in a way that tries to give the town as much time as possible to consider, what's being requested. That's why we're doing this work session. That's why we already drafted the legislation. But a lot of times, those attachments, come in closer to the deadline than certainly I would like. But that information is and will be known, and we will very clearly communicate with the working group that the council is interested in having an understanding of the scope of the project, what's being constructed, and having an opportunity to understand and review the RMA, which is certainly an exercise in math skills that I'm not qualified to do, but understanding and I think is vital to making sure that we are acting in the best interest of the town.
Very good. Any other questions, comments while we got Kimberly on the line?
I want to thank her for her participation today, because I think she's made a concerted effort to try to convey to the board the understanding of what these documents actually do. And that's important for the board to fully appreciate, I think, because if the board supports the Southfields PUD, having that go forward, I think this is a crucial element, or crucial elements actually, in order for that to happen.
Thank you, Lou.
Well, I'm happy to answer any questions as they arise. Sometimes these discussions need to percolate, and and questions can come up. Feel free to communicate with me directly. Feel free to communicate with me through Lewis. I think as you have been, and I'll be happy to answer. And if I don't have the answer, I will get it for you, because this is, obviously, as I like to say, when you're doing something like this, you're really looking to use your power for good and not for evil. And this is one of the things the town, can do to facilitate development, economic development in your town.
One of the things I want to emphasize here too is Kimberly and I have a similar relationship with college, the Salisbury State College.
Yeah.
So I trust her implicitly because she's a Salisbury graduate.
Yeah, us Seagulls, we got a good
Besides
education,
Columbia
didn't
Law,
we?
of course.
Oh, shush. I'll give my alumni contributions to Salisbury, first before law school any day of the week. But yeah, you're right. It was a special place to start my career. Yeah.
Very nice. I didn't make Salisbury. I wasn't there too long, but I was there.
Yeah, you were there.
It happens.
I know.
I think
It was a state school. Lewis and I were there when it was a state
too,
school.
yeah.
We were there when it was Salisbury State, not university.
Yeah,
Me too. Yeah.
Oh, is that
And
right? Okay.
Oh yeah, I know. I try to, take care of myself.
There you go.
Oh, it was definitely Salisbury State when I was there too. And my dad, loved the Salisbury State joke.
Yes.
Salisbury State.
Well, I'll find out what year you went there after the meeting.
I think it's on my bio. So yeah. I don't know
After
if that
you, Ralph.
ages me a bit.
Okay, very good. Anyone else have any questions at this point? I know we're going to have a lot more when we see the numbers, how they break down, what percentages of the numbers break down. But I think it was very important to get this understanding of what this means. But I think that the board will be, my belief is that the homeowner percentage of this assessment is going to be a lot lower than you believe. So I think that the burden's going to fall a lot on the commercial properties, the sportsplex. That's kind of my belief, and I may be wrong in that thinking, but I think there'll be less of an impact on the homeowner in that development than we think. With that, thank you all. Lou, anything else?
I don't know. We have some callers.
We got 332. Any questions you want to ask about this on the workshop? Please state your name and your
I
address.
I've got a question.
Oh, it's Mr. Lemon.
It's me, different phone.
Yes.
You all talked about the cost to the property owner, which if it were $2,000 over time, you were okay. If it were $5,000, it might be another issue. I don't know if you addressed how you would handle that. The other thing is, I think I heard you say that the cost of these improvements was $12 million. That's what you're going to go for the municipal bonds for. What happens if you have cost overruns, and how is that to be handled? And then the other part of the question is, can the highway use funds be used for this project if they need it and come into play?
Well, I'll answer those questions. The first question is, the $12 million was only a ballpark. We don't have the engineer's cost estimate yet. So that was a figure just thrown out there. The second question you had was, what happens if the cost of the improvements exceed the amount of the bond proceeds? Under a development agreement that we have with them, the developer is responsible entirely for those costs and expenses, not the town of Elkton. And the third question you had is, highway user revenue cannot be used for this road until it's a public road. Once it's conveyed to the town and we own it, we can use highway user revenue to make improvements in the future. Now, the reason I say that is because we'll get credit for whatever road mileage that is on that road too, once it's conveyed to us. But highway user revenue can only be used on roads that we own.
Does that
Got it.
answer? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have caller 8553.
Hey, yeah, it's Tim Rothmel. How y'all doing?
Hey, Tim.
Hey, I was hoping you guys would indulge me with something that might be just briefly off topic since the September 16th one got canceled. I was just piloting for if there was an update worth sharing as far as the police chief hiring process. And also a quick question. Somebody told me something about more cameras going in on Main Street in Elkton. So I was wondering if there's anything to share on either of those fronts.
Well, I can tell you that I'll start with the cameras on Main Street. We've got cameras on Main Street that go from the Circuit Court all the way to American Home and Hardware. There's cameras that go from the center of town all the way up to High Street via North Street.
Oh yeah, those I know. Somebody told me I heard that there was like more going in at some point. I'm like, oh, all right, I'll ask.
There's currently no additional plans that I'm aware of for any additional cameras. They have to be in line of sight. We'd love to have the whole town under cameras, quite frankly. But at this point, to answer your question, there hasn't been any discussion about anything new on cameras.
Cool.
Police chief, I can tell you that I reviewed the applications along with Commissioner Massimiano about a week ago. I think Commissioner Givens has looked them over, Commissioner Piner. I'm not sure if Commissioner Brumel has reviewed them or not. Lou George has reviewed them, and we haven't put all of our notes together. Unless, Lou, you have something to add any more than that?
No, it's still all those applicants are actually the letters of interest we have are still under review. We haven't nailed down any small number yet.
Does that answer it, Tim?
Oh, it does. It does. Cool.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I see Mr. William Carroll's on the line. Do you have any questions or comments about this bill, Will?
No, I'm just here taking notes. So no, I don't have any direct questions. Mayor, if I have any, I'll give you a holler after.
Thank you so much.
Mm.
Okay, hearing none. Lou, you have anything else to add?
I want to thank Kimberly again for her participation in this meeting, and we look forward to having you at the October 7th workshop. Public hearing For God's sake, make sure you attend that meeting.
You're muted.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
muted up.
Okay.
So as you can see, technology is not my forte. And so I appreciate your patience with me earlier, and I will certainly make sure that my technology is up and running sufficiently for the meeting, and look forward to it as well. I'm happy to be of service. This is, you know, what I enjoy doing the most.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. And I was going to ask the question about the Circle Bar in Salisbury, but I didn't want to go. I was going to try to go. Okay, now I'm finding the time frame. That's the reason.
Uh-oh.
Okay, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys for all showing up.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you, Ms. Min.
Thank you. Sure thing. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.